So I'm Kate Coffey, I work at Riverine Plains in Mulwala. So this project came out of the John Kierkegaard work that was done through the GRDC, and John was looking at different ways of managing your soil and water to become more resilient, especially in the drier times. So the aspect we're looking at here with Tim is looking at how including diversity such as legume crops can help improve that resilience. So what we're trying to establish here, if you have a legume crop, what are the nitrogen impacts and what are also the soil water impacts from having that legume in your system. What we found was we had a lot more soil nitrogen, I think it was about 60 kilos more nitrogen in the faba bean stubble than we had in the wheat. And so how that's panned out this year when we're aiming for a high yielding canola crop is we've had to put less nitrogen on the side where it was previously faba bean. So we put about 60 kgs less nitrogen on the side that was faba bean. So it's sort of turning out how we expected. And the other thing that Tim's looking at is where we haven't put the additional nitrogen, we're putting out a strip trial just to validate what we're seeing in the soil tests.
My name's Tim Trevethan. My family brought this place in 2014, but have been farming for probably 35 years, thereabouts. Our typical rotation would be a wheat canola rotation and then corn through the summer. We're situated between Howlong and Corowa on the Riverine Highway. I don't know if growing wheat canola is sustainable from a nitrogen point of view, so I don't know if yields are slipping a little bit, but we just wanted to test the system to see how much nitrogen a pulse or a legume can put into the system, and especially with the high cost of fertiliser, we wanted to see if we can grow high yielding crops with organic in instead of nitrogen in the bag, I guess. So the paddock was half sown to faba beans and half sown to wheat, purely because we ran out of bean seed, so we had to sow the other half of the circle to a wheat crop. Half the circle was wheat on wheat, the other half was a faba bean crop into a wheat stubble. Just trying to reduce our nitrogen spend in crop, get our cost base down there. So yeah, typically a wheat canola rotation. We have been trialling, like I said, faba beans for 2 years, but we're also growing vetch pastures or vetch clover rye base pastures where we run sheep, and that will pretty much gives us the opportunity to graze our pasture base over the winter spring months, and then we'll brown manure that to get a canola or wheat, preferably a canola in on that. If faba beans fail, we can't graze it, so there isn't that opportunity to graze a bean crop if it does get wet or diseased or what the case may be. But yeah, there is a benefit in grazing a vetch base pasture to brown manure, and that'll give us that end fix for subsequent crops. The challenges started in 2022. Both the wheat and the faba beans were a failure due to the wet conditions, so we just had too much waterlogging, whereby we set the wheat crop up to grow every bit of 6 tonne, if not hopeful of 8 tonne a hectare, and the beans were sort of hopeful of 5 to 7 tonne of grain. I think the wheat ended up yielding under 3 tonne a hectare, and the beans, from memory, were about 0.7 of a tonne a hectare, so they were the start of our challenges, I guess. But that said, there was good residual nitrogen for this year's crop, so we didn't remove any of the nitrogen in the grain. And then challenges this year with the canola, it started with sowing. We had a very wet profile, so we tried to just scratch the canola in very shallow. There was a bit of residual trash from the wheat stubble and the bean stubble, so seed placement was probably too shallow, and our plant numbers probably suffered, or field establishment rate suffered. I think there were 15 to 18 plants per square metre, and we were aiming for probably 35 to 40 plants a square metre. So yeah, we would have gone deeper with our seed at planting. We also had slugs. It has been a bad paddock for slugs in the past, so we knew slugs were going to be there, and they were in high numbers, especially on the faba bean stubble. But we did bait post-sow pre-emergent with Metarex at 3 kilos a hectare and didn't see any slug issues after that. And we did have sclerotinia in the crop, probably early winter from memory. Yeah, that did knock the crop around a little bit, so it did get a fungicide spray.